Okay. Okay.
Bye, Pat.
I'm really gonna be.
Hi, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, put it right between the piano and the organ there. So it'll be right.
All right, Timothy, let's have a look at
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. By golly, I'm gonna meet you. Give this one. Yeah. Right on.
Doing here.
It looks pretty good.
Well, no, of course, I didn't start out to bring together a quarter of the world's prodigious musical savants, nor did I ever dream that Hope University would grow to its current size or be able to pioneer and develop the techniques that would help these people through the fine arts. Well, I'd been an executive secretary for many years, and then my husband Eldon got a new job and we transferred down here, we moved down here. And I started working in a school office and became fascinated with the kids who were sent to the office for discipline because they also seemed to have learning problems. Because I became so interested, I had to go back and get a teaching credential. Going back to school at 45, sort of the little old lady in tennis shoes, and there weren't many of us at that point. And it was very difficult to go back to school, but I stuck it out, and then in 1969, the Anaheim, California Union High School District did hire me as a teacher and to teach at Hope School. Okay. Well, actually, in 1969, it took legislative action to get most of the school districts to form schools for the severely handicapped, such as Hope School. Well, once I was at Hope School, they asked me to establish a music department. And I rather quickly found out that most of what we had been told about teaching persons with severe learning handicaps was just pretty far off base. So I started developing my own curriculum, my own music materials, and I found that the kids would learn very quickly. They thought they were just having fun, but they were learning many things through the music, and this became the basis for a lot that we did later. You know, I have to say that the High Hopes started from a rather extraordinary incident in the classroom. And I was playing a song one day and muttered to myself, what key did I play this in last week? And this voice that I hadn't heard before from the back of the room said, key of G, Mrs. Walker. And I looked, and it was this blind, withdrawn man who just sat in the classroom and never said anything. And it was just extraordinary. I knew at that moment that something had happened that had real significance. I began working with Paul as much as I could, and as we sort of peeled back the layers, as it were, we found that he had an encyclopedic knowledge of rock and roll and the song titles and the artists and the release dates. Beyond that, he had a wonderful sense of rhythm and could play the bongos very well. He had an untrained baritone, but obviously a very good voice, and perfect pitch. Well, of course, Paul Keen's unique talents sort of excited us, and then we began to look for talents in other students and discovered quite a number of talents. While they weren't perhaps as amazing as Paul's, they were certainly good talents, and we enjoyed working with them. We found that Paul could sing well enough to almost carry a show himself, but of course a lot of work had to be done with all of the students, and he started singing The Impossible Dream, which became his trademark. And the parents watching would jump to their feet with tears streaming down their faces. And it was an incredible thing. At that time, I hadn't heard the word savant, but I did know that my life wasn't ever going to be the same again.
A prodigious savant is a handicapped person, a retarded or autistic person, whose abilities, unusual mental abilities, are so great that even a very bright, normal person could not match them. Now, the skills that Dustin Hoffman displayed in Rain Man were prodigious sorts, like being able to multiply 4-digit numbers in his head, or being able to memorize decks of cards in a gambling casino. Even a very bright, a very talented, ordinary person could not do that. So they call that level of skill prodigious savants.
You touched my face with love in your eyes, but will you touch my heart with the understanding that it takes to realize I just can't play a part? There's the need to be true to myself and make my own mistakes, and not to lean too hard on someone else, no matter what it takes. So if you're sure it's love, just be sure it's love for this thing called me. 'Cause I am what I am, and I have the need to be.
Here at Hope University, we work with people at varying levels of talent. Some of them are extraordinarily gifted, just people at genius level in music, for instance, extremely creative people. We try to make that the kind of environment where creativity and talent is truly prized, and so all of our people are encouraged, and they have this feeling within them that they can do something quite extraordinary, and so they do something quite extraordinary, and that again is something we're about here. I think another thing we're about is the research. If we can find out, for instance, how our prodigious savants, our genius savants, think, how they access memory particularly, that'd be a wonderful thing for all of us to be able to do. And so perhaps our research is going to have real application to the lives of everybody. So we're hoping that we can do a great deal more research as time goes on. Dr. Ruth Smith, the head of our Department of Research and Development, 30 years of wonderful experience, doctorate in 5 areas from USC, all kinds of credentials, marvelous, wonderful woman who understands our people and who is literally mobbed by them when she comes on campus because she is so respected and so loved. Well, Hope University has been quite a family affair. This is particularly true of the Smiths. Harley was our first principal at Hope School, a wonderful man who gave us all the kinds of training that we truly needed. And he and Ruth have been very important to Hope University all the way.
When we reflect on the kind of problems that we experienced as we were back 15, 20, 25 years ago, I recall parents that would refuse to let their children go on field trips because they did not want them exposed to society. The school district itself was not supportive in any way with the things that we were attempting to do. I remember and I recall one year I had a principal in a new school where I was a teacher. That whole year I was not evaluated by that principal because he would not come into the classroom. It's easy to forget the behavior, the tremendous behavioral problems that so many of these students and young adults have. And when we look back on these things, we can see the problems that did exist. However, you will still find this in some of the newer students today.
We don't constrain him. We don't restrict him. We do have him go out and use the bicycle. He can do that, and he can run and shoot baskets in the gym, and this is a nice way for him to expend this energy. And then when he feels comfortable, he comes back and joins us, and he's very normal.
Is he communicative? Can he talk?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Talks a lot, probably.
And he speaks in a staccato voice.
You want to say something, Dave?
Just, all right, stop it. Monitor, stop it. Go on, go on. David, go over to the gym. It's all right.
Yeah, but
He's okay.
Just a question.
He's okay.
Probably one of the best examples of the success we've had here at the school would be Gary Ahern. Now, Gary was in a workshop environment, and to the workshop an old organ came in, and he asked if he could fix it. Of course, no one thought he could, but he surprised everyone by doing it, and then he sat down and played Liebestron by Liszt. No one knew he could play, and this absolutely floored them, particularly Scotty Argelander, who was a teacher there. And she then decided that Gary was going to have his chance to develop that talent. And her commitment to helping him was almost all-consuming. And after 2 years' search, she finally found us, and we began to work with Gary. Now, Gary has mental retardation, and he's multi-handicapped. At that time, his teeth were so severely misshapen that almost nothing he said could be understood. He had skin cancers on his back, and his behaviors were really socially unacceptable. He had a lot of things against him, but he had this tremendous talent.
Gary was mumbling when we got him. I gave him a non-verbal performance scale because I couldn't get one word out of him. And I believe, Gary, you could conduct a man on the street broadcast now.
Yeah, well, I used to do a whole lot of man on the street broadcasts, but this is my first time on television, and as soon as we get Jack Williams to teach me how to tune a piano, we might have...
He wants to learn how to tune a piano. Of course, he has Prader-Willi syndrome, and he is our only Prader-Willi, and they are rather common, but we just have one. He is a prodigious savant, and I mean he is a prodigious savant. Do you know what that means?
Well, which means I'm really gifted, and I got all the good mystery I have, and wow, and when I play my instrument, boy, it sure really does make me happy.
Okay. He is an unknown. He is left-handed. We gave him a guitar strung right-handed. He picked the notes perfectly of a song, of a very difficult song, and didn't miss a note, and yet he didn't restring it. He also is very sensitive to sound. He will be in a doctor's office, and a man will be snoring, and he'll say, oh, he's snoring in E-flat. Every single sound has meaning to him. The neurology of learning tells us that there are many kinds of learning on either side of the brain. Through our work with these students, with all of these handicapped students, we have found that the left brain has either been damaged or is certainly very low in functioning. Well, these are your abstract skills. These are your concept formation. These are your reasoning skills. We work through the right brain, the creative brain, hoping that we can develop these people to be employable, to be more effective in everyday living, and it is working. Danny has a beautiful voice. He thinks he's Elvis. He does have a beautiful voice,
Realize.
and he imitates
Well, I
Elvis.
don't know about that, baby.
I like the music, drawing, and the songwriting in general because we need to show the people out there that disabled people are talented and need, normal lives like girlfriends, boyfriends, wives, husbands, so on, and also be able to show off their talents. And to me, that's the one great thing about Hope University and being able to display what you can do.
Carol Abraham's techniques of vocal instruction with the music and the singing have resulted in our students improving their speech tremendously, but also because they are able to express their feelings and thoughts musically, they become better able to communicate with other people.
One thing that is so important is we want our students to be all that they can be. And through singing, they learn that they're a special person because they have a voice that's not like anyone else's. It's like a thumbprint.
As a class under Joanne Kwok, our music therapist, composed some 35 songs. These specifically to show rules of English and spelling.
Okay, I need to have you listen. Now, let's take a look at this phrase here. The girls ring. The apostrophe comes after the S. Now, whose ring is it?
Lori's.
Everybody, the whole girls here. All the girls. All the girls.
All the girls.
Apostrophe S, apostrophe S. What does it mean and what does it show? Apostrophe S, apostrophe S. What does it mean and what does it show? Let's take a phrase like tin's ring. Tin's ring. Tin is spelled T-I-N, apostrophe S. Who does the ring belong to? Shows the ring belongs to
Our students are so highly motivated and music touches them so very deeply that it's a wonderful tool to use therapeutically in many different areas, such as the physical aspect, the social development, the academics, auditory memory, things like that.
Well, this is a real exciting place to work because there are so many things that can be done through music, and you've already seen a lot of that already, I'm sure. Music has a calming effect, even though you saw today some of the more rhythmic songs that they do, and that gets them into the feeling of the motion and the clapping and the tapping of feet and so forth, but at the same time, much of the music does have a calming effect. Generally speaking, as I said, they're highly motivated and their direction is in one avenue, whether it's molding, modeling, or drawing or painting, or playing some instrument. And you don't often find them that are really gifted in several areas, and we have several here who are, who sing, who play, and who can paint or draw. So the growth that is experienced in them, I think, again, so many times we think of the handicapped person is one who's limited in the sense that he cannot go beyond his limitations. But I haven't found that to be true here. As I said, we've already seen them breaking out and opening up into other avenues and learn. Many of them are learning to read where they couldn't read before or couldn't read very well, and they're already developing.
Because we're the only place in the world which specializes in working with these savants through their music, we're contacted by parents and guardians asking us to help their loved ones. Here's a young savant with autistic behaviors, Cyril Ramirez, who came to visit us. Some of the behaviors are rather typical of the autistic raw savant.
So let me just tell you a little bit about what it's like to teach Ciro trumpet lessons. First of all, when he comes in the room in my studio, I generally immediately put on a blues record, a background play-along record, and it gets things started right away. And so he takes out his horn and we start to improvise for 5 or 10 minutes. And during the improvisation, what happens is that I allow him to express. And then when he kind of runs out of ideas, then I start to just kind of give him little ideas that he can work on. And he'll listen very intently, and the art of what I'm doing is to give him the right amount of stuff so that he won't be overloaded, and he'll be able to mimic what I'm doing and pick up the little embellishment or whatever I'm teaching him.
He is so motivated. Other people take notice of him, which means that other people want to associate with him. People want to help him. People respect him because of his talent. That's kind of like the opening argument in his whole life is his trumpet. He's also in the advanced jazz band, which just took first prize in the inter-school jazz contest. And Ciro took the best trumpet soloist prize too, which is a tremendous honor. I mean, nobody knew, and none of the judges knew about his autism at all. He plays in regular bands too. I mean, I just have no idea where he's going to go. I hope that one day he'll be able to come here, and if not as a full-time student, to come and play with the band and always be connected with it in some way, because what they're doing here is marvelous.
Well, the talents of savants are usually found just quite by accident. Because of their severe disabilities, people don't expect to see anything, and some astute person suddenly realizes they've seen something quite extraordinary.
When he was very young, he was developmentally delayed, and my parents were initially told that he was deaf, and they did not believe that and took him from doctor to doctor. And finally, at the age of about 4, they were told that he had a thyroid that was not functioning properly, and he was put on thyroid medication at that time. And he would hum tunes at about 9 to 10 months of age. He was humming a tune after he would hear it, but he didn't really talk until he was 4 years old. And then we were in the car one day and we were singing. We always sang wherever we went. And he said to my mother, well, why don't we sing this song in the key of B flat major or minor, whatever. And I remember my mother, the car kind of swerving as she couldn't believe what she was hearing. And she went home and put him in the kitchen, and she went into where the piano was and would hit a key, say, what note is this, Tim? And Tim would tell her. And they knew that he could musically reproduce whatever he heard.
Well, of course, the raw talent does train itself through copying, and they all do this. They practice techniques back and forth just by watching other musicians. But of course, what they really like is to get into a good jam session.
Very good.
Ronnie Langlo is, of course, our prodigious musical savant who has perhaps the most obvious physical disability.
The first time that I saw Ronnie, he was on the playground at Morningside Hospital. And he was a very little boy for his age. He wasn't the normal size of other children. He was playing on the playground. He had his eye bandaged. They had taken him to Seattle to have more surgery done on the side of his face because he was born with only half a face. And they had cut the eye socket in, and then using the skin from the palm of his hand, they had lined the eye socket. He was to later have a prosthesis, but they had to allow this to grow to match the rest of the facial growth as he grew older. After seeing him there, I didn't see him again for a long time until the time that his caseworker, or social worker as she was called in those days, called me and told me that she had a little boy who she was taking to Seattle to have a lot of surgical work done on his face, and that he was a retarded child. He did not speak. He only made small sounds like squeaking, little squeaky noises, ee, ee, ee. And they had taught him to use sign language, so he talked on his hands.
A social worker persuaded Dr. Bronke to give Ron a weekend at her home, and there were 12 foster children living there at the time. And when the social worker drove up to the driveway, Ron Langlo jumped out and ran up to the porch where Bronke was waiting.
And he ran up the first steps, and he stopped for a minute, and he looked up at me, and he came running up the other steps. He threw out his arms, and he said, "Here I am, Mother, here's your little boy." Now this is a boy that had never said a word other than "ka" or "ma" or "squeaked." This one particular day, and I don't remember what you were doing. You were in the kitchen or something. You were
down in the basement.
Down in the basement when Shirley was playing, and she missed a complete chord on the piano. And Ronnie shot off the Davenport, ran over to the piano bench, pushed her off of the piano bench. She fell on the floor. He sat down at the piano, and he played that song like he had played it all of his life. So after he sat down at the piano, he began playing other songs too. And I went to the telephone, and I called Clara Salisbury, and I asked her, "Has Ronnie ever played the piano for you?" And she said, "Oh my goodness, no, he's never been around a piano." Well, by then I called Ivan, and he came upstairs to hear this wonderful music because he was playing beautifully. There was no mistakes. And I told Clara, I said, "I want you to listen to this." And I took the phone over by the piano, and I said, "That's Ronnie playing." She said, "Oh my God, that can't be Ron." And I said, "That is Ron playing. Ronnie is at the piano. And she said, I'll be right there. So 15 minutes later, his social worker was in our living room, and Ronnie was playing the piano. He played songs that were sung in World War I in France. He played German music. He played music that was, some of the songs I don't even know what they were. I couldn't give you a title on them. And from that day on, Ronnie has played every instrument we've put in front of him. Recently, we brought our prodigious savants to the workroom of Jimmy Hotz. Now, he's just invented a totally new system that we think can revolutionize the way music is composed and performed. We watched them learn to play it in less time than it takes to tell. Well, that's magic.
Tim Daly is another prodigious savant with multiple talents in art and music.
He not only plays the piano spontaneously, but you know, Tim knows hundreds and hundreds of songs, and sometimes after just hearing them once. And often, unexpectedly, he'll sit down and play a tune that none of us had any idea he knew. It's not easy to realize, you know, even I forget, that Tim has cerebral palsy. It affected both his hands, made it very difficult for him to play. His limp left hand used to just keep flying around, and his right hand was bent at the elbow, and 2 fingers on that hand were rigid. And his mother tells me that by hard and painful exercise, terrific self-discipline, Tim managed to make both his arms and hands pliable, so he can play with professional ease now.
I am what they call a multiple savant, handicapped person, and I not only have a gift to play the piano, but I almost will have a gift to do artwork through music. See, this would help other people, or to show other people that I not only have one gift, but I have several gifts too.
Wonderful. And I see you apply your musical gift to your work in your on your paper.
And all the artwork I do would be affiliated with music, because that's how I express myself.
All of the handicaps have been very obvious to the public, but I don't think ever before have we been allowed the privilege of seeing the beauty and the love and the joy inside these people. And I think that's a great deal of what we're about here at Hope. Another thing we're about is showing to the parents of young children who maybe just for the first time are realizing their child has some barriers and it's a very difficult transition for them. We're showing that the future does contain a lot, that this person can be valued in our society.
Because, you know, sometimes people are afraid to come up and shake our hands or do something that they might not understand what we are. So I think we have to realize that we're our people too, and they gotta accept what we are.
People have to understand that we're talented people, we are God's children. If they can't, they have to understand we're human beings too.
How do you think we can change this, Lori?
By expressing our feelings and showing our emotions.
The only thing I can say is that when I play the piano, that really brings out the love, and you know, and then people really don't have any regretful feelings, or they don't have any negative feelings after they hear and to see what I'm doing.
Go to the audience, I show my love to them, and that's one of the most important things, to show love to other people.
How would you want them to treat you?
I want them to treat me just like they're human. I'm human too.
Are they supposed to give you some privileges or extra treatment or
Just
what?
a hug.
Just a hug, huh?
Yes.
If you have a goal, go reach for it. Don't be afraid if you are a handicapped person.
Well, my highest hope for anybody, whether they're retarded or autistic or just a normal person, would be that they would be happy. And I think that anyone who's seen the High Hopes perform or who's visited Hope University realizes that that being mentally handicapped is certainly not a handicap as far as being happy is concerned. Those individuals are very well adjusted and very well pleased with their performances and very well pleased with life. And I think that Hope University gives us all hope, not only for these handicapped people, but for ourselves as well.
To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man scorned and covered with scars still stroll with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable stars.
Do you remember in a fairy tale how the wicked witch's spell turned the handsome prince to a fraud? Through the power of her potion, she handed him the notion he was lower than a bump on a log. And though she left him green and warted, her evil plan was thwarted when there chanced to happen by a young miss who, in spite of his complexion, offered her affection and broke the wicked spell with a kiss. Well, if you've never been a frog kissing, then you don't know what you've been missing. There's a world of opportunity under each and every law. And if you've never been a charm breaker, if you've never been a handsome prince maker, really? Just slow down, turn around, bend down and kiss you a frog. Once upon a time ago, I was down and feeling low, like a lowly frog in a pond. Life was just a joke, and I was very near to croak, and I was sapped by life's wicked one. But in the depths of my depression, there came a true expression of love from a lady so sweet. She gave me warm, fuzzy feelings, feelings that were healing, and swept me off my little web feet. Well, if you'd never been frog kissing, then you don't know what you've been missing. Really? There's a world of opportunity under each and every log. And if you never been a heartbreaker, if you never been a handsome prince of acre, just slow down, turn around, bend down and kiss your frog. There's a happy ever after land deep in the heart of man, where a prince of princes abides. But all we get are glimpses of the handsome prince of princes, 'cause they're covered by a green warty hide. And though they're full of life's potential, they're lacking one essential to enable them to shine like a star. And that's to have some guy or missus smother them with kisses and love them while they're just like they are. And that's the secret of frog kissing. And you can do it too if you'll just listen.
Really?
Just slow down, turn around, and bend down and kiss you a frog. Just slow down, turn around, and bend down and kiss you a frog. Ribbit, 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 ribbit.